right. Round 2. I am not displaying, am I? There we go. Display. Smart as I am, I just ate, so mouth is feeling a bit what's the term? It's not quite sticky or heavy, but definitely the back of my tongue feels almost swollen. Phlegmy, for sure. Sluggish. Alright. Alright, gonna focus a bit more on either enunciation or projection. I'll go for enunciation on this one and see how that goes. Yeah, eating immediately before attempting a stream is not the best. Alright, let's go for it. Alright, Baltic Sea today. The Baltic Sea is an arm of the Atlantic Ocean, enclosed by Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Germany, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Russia, Sweden, and the North and Central European plain. The sea stretches from 53 degrees north to 66 degrees north latitude and from 10 degrees east to 30 degrees east longitude. A marginal sea of the Atlantic with limited water exchange between the two bodies. Awkward cadence there. Let's try that one again. A marginal sea of the Atlantic with limited water exchange between the two water bodies, the Baltic Sea drains through the Danish Straits into the Kattegat by way of the Øresund, Great Belt, and Little Belt. It includes the Gulf of Bothnia, the Bay of Bothnia, the Gulf of Finland, the Gulf of Riga, and the Bay of Gdansk. The Baltic proper is bordered on its northern edge at latitude 6 degrees north by Åland and the Gulf of Bothnia, on its northeastern edge by the Gulf of Finland, on its eastern edge by the Gulf of Riga, and in the west by the Swedish part of the southern Scandinavia peninsula. The Baltic Sea is connected by artificial waterways to the White Sea via the White Sea-Baltic Canal and to the German Bight of the North Sea via the Kiel Canal. Here is a map of the Baltic Sea region. Yep. Latvia, Finland, Riga. Cool. Skip all this metadata on the side. I mean, I'm reading it for my own interest, but I don't really. Holy shit, that's a lot of islands. Honestly, it's probably on the low side for global sea. The Helsinki Convention on the Protection of the Main... shit. Alright, let's try that one again. The Helsinki Convention on the Protection of the Marine Environment of the Baltic Sea area includes the Baltic Sea and the Kattegat, without calling Kattegat a part of the Baltic Sea. For the purposes of this convention, the Baltic Sea area shall be the Baltic Sea and the entrance to the Baltic Sea, bounded by the parallel of the Skaw and the Skagerrak at 59 degrees 44.43 minutes north. Historically, the Kingdom of Denmark collected sound dues from ships at the border between the ocean and the landlocked Baltic Sea, in tandem in the Oresund at Kronborg Castle near Helsingør, in the Great Belt at Nyborg, and the Little Belt at its narrowest part, then Fredericia. After that stronghold was built. The narrowest part of the Little Belt is the Middelfart Sound near Middelfart. Geographers widely agree that the preferred physical border of the Baltic is a line drawn through the southern Danish islands, Drogdensill and Langeland. The Drogdensill is situated north of the Koge Bucht and connects Dragør in the south of Copenhagen to Malmö. It is used by the Øresund Bridge during the Drogden Tunnel. That's not the word. It is used by the Øresund Bridge, including the Drogden Tunnel. By this definition, the Danish Straits is part of the entrance, but the Bay of Mecklenburg and the Bay of Kiel are parts of the Baltic Sea. Another usual border is the line between Falsterbo, Sweden, and Stevensklint, Denmark, as this is the southern border of Øresund. Awkward cadence there, but I'm not focusing on cadence today. Also, sight reading, so whatever. It's also the border between the shallow southern Øresund with a typical depth of 5 to 10 meters only, and notably deeper water. Here we see the Danish Straits and southwestern Baltic Sea. Cool. Drogdensill, a depth of 7 meters, 23 feet. 7 meters or 23 feet, that sounds better. One more time. Drogdensill, at a depth of 7 meters or 23 feet, sets a limit to Øresund, and Darssill, a depth of 18 meters or 59 feet, and a limit to the Belt Sea. These shallow sills are obstacles to the flow of heavy salt water from the Kattegat into the basins around Bornholm and Gotland. The Kattegat and the southwestern Baltic Sea are well oxygenated and have a rich biology. The remainder of the sea is brackish, poor in oxygen and in species. Thus, statistically, the more of the entrance that is included in its definition, the healthier the Baltic appears. Conversely, the more narrowly it is defined, the more endangered its biology appears. Tacitus called it mare su. Let's see if I can remember my Latin. Mare Suebicum, after the Germanic people of the Suebi, and Ptolemy, Sarmatian Ocean, after the Sarmatians. But the first to name it the Baltic Sea, in medieval Latin, Mare Balticum, was the 11th century German chronicler Adam of Bremen. The origin of the latter name is speculative, and it was adopted into Slavic and Finnic languages spoken around the area, very likely due to the role of medieval Latin in cartography. It might be connected to the German word belt, a name used for two of the Danish straits, the belts, while others claim it to be directly derived from the source of the Germanic word, Latin Balteus, belt. Adam of Bremen himself compared the sea with a belt, stating that it was so named because it stretches through the land as a belt. Balticius eo quod in modum Baltaei longo tractu per Scythicas regiones dator usque in Graeciam. That's a really long quote there, Wikipedia. Here we see Åland between Baltic Sea and the Gulf of Bothnia. Oh god, this is a tough map for me to read. Yeah, I'm not even gonna try. Sorry. He might also have been influenced by the name of a legendary island mentioned in the Natural History of Pliny the Elder. Pliny mentions an island named Baltia or Balkia with reference to accounts of Pythias and Xenophon. It is possible that Pliny refers to an island named Basilia the Royal on the ocean by Pythias. Baltia also might be derived from belt and therein mean near belt of sea, strait. Others have suggested that the name of the island originates from the Proto-Indo-European root Biel? I don't know how to interpret that. Meaning white, fair, which may echo the naming of seas after colors relating to the cardinal points, as per Black Sea and Red Sea. This Biel root and basic meaning were retained in Lithuanian as Baltas, Latvian as Balts, and Slavic as Beli. I did not pronounce that right, but I don't know Slavic pronunciation. On the basis, a related hypothesis holds that the name originated from this Indo-European root via a Baltic language such as Lithuanian. Another explanation is that, while derived from the aforementioned root, the name of the sea is related to names for various forms of water and related substances in several European languages that might have been originally associated with colors found in swamps. Compare Proto-Slavic Bolto swamp. Yet another explanation is that the name originally meant enclosed sea, bay, as opposed to open sea. In the Middle Ages, the sea was known by a variety of names. The name Baltic Sea became dominant only after 1600. The use of Baltic in similar terms to denote the region east of the sea started only in the 19th century. Interesting. The Baltic Sea was known in ancient Latin language sources as Mare Suebicum or even Mare Germanicum. Older native names and languages that used to be spoken on the shores of the sea or near it usually indicate the geographical location of the sea in Germanic languages, or its size in relation to smaller gulfs in Old Latvian or tribes associated with it. In Old Russian, the sea was known as the Varangian Sea. In modern languages, it is known by the equivalents of East Sea, West Sea, or Baltic Sea in different languages. The Baltic Sea is used in modern English in the Baltic languages. Latvian, Baltija Sierra, in Old Latvian was referred to as the Big Sea, while the present-day Gulf of Riga was referred to as the Little Sea. In Lithuanian, Baltijų Sierra, in Latin, Mare Balticum, and the Romance languages, French, Mare Baltique, Italian, Mar Baltico, Portuguese, Mar Baltico, Romanian, Marea Baltica, and Spanish, Mar Balticio. Baltico, sorry. I hate the italics with those eyes. In Greek, Baltiki Thalassa. In Albanian, Deti Baltic. In Welsh, Mor Baltig. In the Slavic languages, Polish. Morze Baltiki or Baltic, Czech, Baltske more or Balt, Slovenian, Baltsko more, Bulgarian, Baltisko more, Kashubian, Bolt, Macedonian, Baltiko more, Ukrainian, Baltikske more, Belarusian, Baltiske more, Russian, Baltiskoe more, and Serbo-Croatian, Baltiko more. In Hungarian, Balti-Tanger. In Germanic languages, except English, EC is used, as in Afrikaans, OC, Danish, Ostersoen, Dutch, Otzi, German, Ostsee, Low German, Ostsee, Icelandic and Faroese, Eystersalt, Norwegian, Ostersjøen, Nynorsk, Ostersøyen, and Swedish, Ostersjön. In Old English, it was known as Ossai. Also in Hungarian, the former name was Keleti Tenger, EC due to German influence. In addition, Finnish, a Finnic language, uses the term Edameri, EC, possibly a calque from a Germanic language. As the Baltic is not particular eastward in relation to Finland, the use of this term may be a leftover from the period of Swedish rule. In another Finnic language, Estonian, it is called the West Sea, Läänemeri. With the correct geography, the sea is west of Estonia. In South Estonian, it has the meaning of both West Sea and Evening Sea, Odogameri. At the time of the Roman Empire, the Baltic Sea was known as a Mare Suebicum or Mare Sarmaticum. Tacitus, in his 98 AD Agricola in Germania, described the Mare Suebicum, named for the Suebi tribe, during the spring months as a brackish sea where the ice broke apart and chunks floated about. The Suebi eventually migrated southwest to temporarily reside in the Rhineland area of modern Germany, where their name survives in the historic region known as Swabia. Jordanes called the Germanic sea in his work the Getica. Excuse me. In the early Middle Ages, Norse Scandinavian merchants built a trade empire all around the Baltic. Later, the Norse fought for control of the Baltic against Wendish tribes dwelling on the southern shore. The Norse also used the rivers of Russia for trade routes, finding their way eventually to the Black Sea and southern Russia. This Norse-dominated period is referred to as the Viking Age. Here we see Cape Arkona on the island of Rügen in Germany was a sacred site of the Rani tribe before Christianization. Since the Viking Age, the Scandinavians have referred to the Baltic Sea as the Ostmar, Eastern Lake. Eastern Sea appears in Heimskringla, and Aistra Salt appears in Sola Pater. Saxo Grammaticus recorded in Gesta Danorum an older name, Ganvik, Vik being Old Norse for bay, which implies that the Vikings correctly regarded it as an inlet of the sea. Another form of the name, Grandvik, attested in at least one English translation of Gesta Danorum, is likely to be a misspelling. In addition to fish, the sea also provides amber, especially from its southern shores within today's borders of Poland, Russia, and Lithuania. First mentions of amber deposits on the south coast of the Baltic Sea date back to the 12th century. The bordering countries have also traditionally exported lumber, wood tar, flax, hemp, and furs by ship across the Baltic. Sweden had, from early medieval times, exported iron and silver mined there, while Poland had and still has extensive salt mines. Thus, the Baltic Sea has long been crossed by much merchant shipping. The lands on the Baltic's eastern shore were among the last in Europe to be converted to Christianity. This finally happened during the Northern Crusades, Finland in the 12th century by Swedes, and what are now Estonia and Latvia in the early 13th century by Danes and Germans, Livonian brothers of the sword. The Teutonic Order gained control over parts of the southern and eastern shore of the Baltic Sea, where they set up their monastic state. Lithuania was the last European state to convert to Christianity. In the period between the 8th and 14th centuries, there was much piracy in the Baltic from the coasts of Pomerania and Prussia, and the Victual brothers held Gotland. Starting in the 11th century, the southern and eastern shores of the Baltic were settled by migrants, mainly from Germany, a movement called Ostadlung, east settling. Other settlers were from the Netherlands, Denmark, and Scotland. The Polabian Slavs were gradually assimilated by the Germans. Denmark gradually gained control over most of the Baltic coast until she lost much of her possessions after being defeated in the 1227 Battle of Bornhoved. Here we see the main trading routes of the Hanseatic League. Hans. In the 13th to 16th centuries, the strongest economic force in Northern Europe was the Hanseatic League, a federation of merchant cities around the Baltic Sea and the North Sea. In the 16th and early 17th centuries, Poland, Denmark, and Sweden fought wars for Dominium Maris Baltici, lordship over the Baltic Sea. Eventually, it was Sweden that virtually encompassed the Baltic Sea. In Sweden, the sea was then referred to as Mare Nostrum Balticium, our Baltic Sea. The goal of Swedish warfare during the 17th century was to make the Baltic Sea an all Swedish sea, et svenskt inanav, something that was accomplished except the part between Riga in Latvia and Stettin in Pomerania. However, the Dutch dominated Baltic Sea trade in the 11th century. Wow, don't know where that came from. In the 17th century. My bad. In the 18th century, Russia and Prussia became the leading powers over the sea. Sweden's defeat in the Great Northern War brought Russia to the eastern coast. Russia became and remained a dominating power in the Baltic. Russia's Peter the Great saw the strategic importance of the Baltic and decided to found his new capital, St. Petersburg, at the mouth of the Neva River at the east end of the Gulf of Finland. There's much trading, and not just within the Baltic region, but also with the North Sea region, especially eastern England and the Netherlands. Their fleets needed the Baltic timber, tar, flax, and hemp. During the Crimean War, a joint British and French fleet attacked the Russian forces in the Baltic. The case is also known as the Åland War. They bombarded Sveaborg. Christ. They bombarded Sveaborg, which guards Helsinki, and Kronstadt, which guards St. Petersburg, and they destroyed Bomarsund in Åland. After the unification of Germany in 1871, the whole southern coast became German. World War I was partly fought in the Baltic Sea. After 1920, Poland was granted access to the Baltic Sea, at the expense of Germany by the Polish corridor and enlarged the port of Gdynia in rivalry with the port of the Free City of Danzig. After the Nazis' rise to power, Germany reclaimed the Memeland, and after the outbreak of the Eastern Front of World War II, occupied the Baltic states. In 1945, the Baltic Sea became a mass grave for retreating soldiers and refugees on torpedoed troop transports. The sinking of the Wilhelm Gustloff remains the worst maritime disaster in history, killing, very roughly, 9,000 people. In 2005, a Russian group of scientists found over 5,000 airplane wrecks, sunken warships, and other material, mainly from World War II, on the bottom of the sea. Since the end of World War II, various nations, including the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and the United States, have disposed of chemical weapons in the Baltic Sea, raising concerns of environmental contamination. Today, fishermen occasionally find some of these materials. The most recent available report from the Helsinki Commission notes that 4 small-scale catches of chemical munitions, representing approximately 105 kilograms, or 231 pounds of material, were reported in 2005. This is a reduction from the 25 incidents representing 1,100 kilograms or 2,400 pounds of material in 2003. Until now, the US government refuses to disclose the exact coordinates of the wreck sites. Deteriorating bottles leak mustard gas and other substances, thus slowly poisoning a substantial part of the Baltic Sea. Here we see in 1649 the settlement of the Latvian-speaking Kozanki spanned from Klaipėda to Gdansk along the coast of the Baltic Sea. After 1945, the German population was expelled from all areas east of the Oder-Neisse line, making room for the new Polish and Russian settlement. Poland gained most of the southern shore. The Soviet Union gained another access to the Baltic with the Kaliningrad Oblast that had been part of German-settled East Prussia. The Baltic states on the eastern shore were annexed by the Soviet Union. The Baltic then separated opposing military blocs, NATO and the Warsaw Pact. Neutral Sweden developed incident weapons to defend its territorial waters after the Swedish submarine incidents. This border status restricted trade and travel. It ended only after the collapse of the communist regimes in Central and Eastern Europe in the late 1980s. Here we see the naval battle of the Sound took place on November 8, 1658, during the Dano-Swedish War. Since May 2004, with the accession of the Baltic states and Poland, the Baltic Sea has been almost entirely surrounded by countries of the European Union. The remaining non-EU shore areas are Russian, the St. Petersburg area, and the Kaliningrad Oblast exclave. Winter storms begin arriving in the region during October. These have caused numerous shipwrecks and contributed to the extreme difficulties of rescuing passengers of the ferry of MS Estonia en route from Tallinn, Estonia, to Stockholm, Sweden in September 1994, which claimed the lives of 852 people. Older wood-based shipwrecks, such as the Vasa, tend to remain well preserved, as the Baltic's cold and brackish water does not suit the shipworm. Storm surge floods are generally taken to occur when the water level is more than 1 meter above normal. In Warnemund, about 110 floods occurred from 1950 to 2000, an average of just over 2 per year. Historic flood events were the All Saints flood of 1304 and other floods in the years 1320, 1449, 1625, 1694, 1784, and 1825. Little is known of their extent. From 1872, there exist regular and reliable records of water levels in the Baltic Sea. The highest was a flood of 1872, when the water was an average of 2.3 meters, or 8 feet, above sea level at Warnemund, and a maximum of 2.83 meters, or 9 foot 3 inches, above sea level in Warnemund. Warnemund. In the last very heavy floods, the average water levels reached 1.88 meters, or 6 feet 2 inches above sea level, in 1904, 1.89 meters, or 6 feet 2 inches in 1913, 1.73 meters, or 5 feet 8 inches in January 1954, 1.68 meters, 5 feet 6 inches on November 2nd to 4th, 1995, and 1.65 meters, 5 feet 5 inches on February 21st, 2002. Here we see the burning of Cap Arcona shortly after the attacks on May 3rd, 1945. Only 350 survived the 4,500 prisoners who had been aboard. An arm of the North Atlantic Ocean, the Baltic Sea is enclosed by Sweden and Denmark to the west, Finland to the northeast, the Baltic countries to the southeast, and the North European plain to the southwest. It is about 1,600 kilometers or 990 miles long, an average of 193 kilometers or 120 miles wide, and an average of 55 meters or 180 feet deep. The maximum depth is 459 meters or 1,500 feet, which is on the Swedish side of the center. The surface area is about 349,000 square kilometers, or 134,000 square miles. The volume is about 20,000 cubic kilometers, or 4,800 cubic miles. The periphery amounts to about 8,000 kilometers, or 5,000 miles of coastline. The Baltic Sea is the largest brackish inland seas by area and occupies a basin, a Zugenbecken, formed by glacial erosion during the last few ice ages. Here we see Baltic drain basins, catchment area, with depth, elevation, major rivers, and lakes. Excuse me. Interesting that Nora is not included, but I think there's a mountain range here. The Baltic proper has an area of 211,000 square kilometers, a volume of 13,000 cubic kilometers, a maximum depth of 459 feet, an average depth of 459 meters, and an average depth of 62.1 meters. The Gulf of Bothnia has an area of 115,000 square kilometers, 6,300 cubic kilometers, 230 meters, and 60.2 meters in maximum and average depth, respectively. The Gulf of Finland has 29,000 square kilometers in area, 1,100 cubic kilometers of volume, 123 meters at maximum depth, and 38 meters flat in average depth. The Gulf of Riga has 16,000 square kilometers in area, is 424 cubic kilometers in volume, has a maximum depth of above 60 meters, and an average depth of 26 meters. The Belt Sea, or Kattegat, has an area of 42,000 square kilometers, volume of 102 cubic kilometers, a maximum depth of 109 meters, and an average depth of 18.9 meters. This amounts to the total Baltic Sea having 415,000 square kilometers in area, 21,000 cubic kilometers in volume, a maximum depth of 459 meters, and an average depth of 52.3 meters. The International Hydrographic Organization defines the limits of the Baltic Sea as follows: bordered by the coasts of Germany, Denmark, Poland, Sweden, Finland, Russia, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. It extends northeastward of the following limits. In the Little Belt, a line joining Falshoft and Vienseis Neck. In the Great Belt, a line joining Gustav, the south extreme of Langland Island, and Kapel Kirk on the island of Lolland. In the Guldborg Sound, a line joining Flinthorn Rev and Skjelby. In the Sound, a line joining Stevens Lighthouse and Foster Bow Point. Here we see the Curonian Spit in Kaliningrad Oblast, Russia. The northern part of the Baltic Sea is known as the Gulf of Bothnia, of which the northernmost part is the Bay of Bothnia, or Bothnian Bay. The more rounded southern basin of the Gulf is called Bothnian Sea, and immediately to the south of it lies the Sea of Åland. The Gulf of Finland connects the Baltic Sea with St. Petersburg. The Gulf of Riga lies between the Latvian capital city of Riga and the Estonian island of Saaremaa. The northern Baltic Sea lies between the Stockholm area, southwestern Finland, and Estonia. The western and eastern Gotland basins form the major ports of the central Baltic Sea, or Baltic proper. The Bornholm Basin is the area east of Bornholm, and the shallower Arkona Basin extends from Bornholm to the Danish Isles of Falster and Zealand. In the south, the Bay of Dansk lies east of the Hel Peninsula on the Polish coast and west of the Sambia Peninsula in Kaliningrad Oblast. The Bay of Pomerania lies north of the islands of Uznam and Wolin, east of Rügen. Between Falster and the German coast lie the Bay of Mecklenburg and Bay of Lübeck. The westernmost part of the Baltic Sea is the Bay of Kiel. The three Danish straits, the Great Belt, the Little Belt, and the Sound Øresund, connect the Baltic Sea with the Kattegat and Skagerrak Strait in the North Sea. The water temperature of the Baltic Sea varies significantly depending on exact location, season, and depth. At the Bornholm Basin, which is located directly east of the island of the same name, the surface temperature typically falls to 0 to 5 degrees Celsius or 32 to 41 degrees Fahrenheit during the peak of the winter and rises to 15 to 20 degrees Celsius or 59 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit during the peak of the summer, with an annual average of around 9 to 10 degrees Celsius or 48 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. A similar pattern can be seen in the Gotland Basin, which is located between the island of Gotland and Latvia. In the deep of these basins, the temperature variations are smaller. At the bottom of the Bornholm Basin, deeper than 80 meters or 260 feet, the temperature typically is 1 to 10 degrees Celsius or 34 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and at the bottom of the Gotland Basin, at depths greater than 225 meters or 738 feet, the temperature typically is 4 to 7 degrees Celsius or 39 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Here we see the regions and basins of the Baltic Sea, which includes the Bothnian Bay, the Bothnian Sea, the Gulf of Bothnia, the Archipelago Sea, the Alan Sea, Gulf of Finland, Northern Baltic proper, Western Gotland Basin, Eastern Gotland Basin, Gulf of Riga, Bay of Dansk or Dansk Basin, Bornholm Basin and Hanno Bight, Arkona Basin, Baltic proper, Kattegat, not an integral part of the Baltic Sea, Belt Sea, Little Belt and Greater Belt, Øresund, the Sound, Danish Straits, which are not integral parts of the Baltic Sea. On the long-term average, the Baltic Sea is ice-covered at the annual maximum for about 45% of its surface area. The ice-covered area during such typical winter includes the Gulf of Bothnia, the Gulf of Finland, the Gulf of Riga, the archipelago west of Estonia, the Stockholm archipelago, and the archipelago sea southwest of Finland. The remainder of the Baltic does not freeze during a normal winter, except sheltered bays and shallow lagoons such as the Curonian Lagoon. The ice reaches its maximum extent in February or March. Typical ice thickness in the northernmost areas in the Bothnian Bay, the northern basin of the Gulf of Bothnia, is about 70 centimeters or 20 inches for land-fast sea ice. The thickness decreases further south. Freezing begins in the northern extremities of the Gulf of Bothnia, typically in the middle of November, reaching the open waters of the Bothnian Bay in early January. The Bothnian Sea, the basin south of Kvarken, freezes on average in late February. The Gulf of Finland and the Gulf of Riga freeze typically in late January. In 2011, the Gulf of Finland was completely frozen on February 15th. The ice extent depends on whether the winter is mild, moderate, or severe. In severe winters, ice can form around southern Sweden and even in the Danish Straits. According to the 18th century natural historian William Durham, during the severe winters of 1703 and 1708, the ice cover reached as far as the Danish Straits. Frequently, parts of the Gulf of Bothnia and the Gulf of Finland are frozen, in addition to coastal fringes in more southerly locations, such as the Gulf of Riga. This description meant that the whole of the Baltic Sea was covered with ice. Since 1720, the Baltic Sea has frozen over entirely 20 times, most recently in early 1987, which is the most severe winter in Scandinavia since 1720. The ice then covered 400,000 square kilometers or 150,000 square miles. During the winter of 2010 to 2011, which was quite severe compared to those of the last decades, the maximum ice cover was 315 square kilometers or 122,000 square miles, which was reached on 25th of February 2011. The ice then extended from the north down to the northern tip of Gotland, with small ice-free areas on either side, and the east coast of the Baltic Sea was covered by an ice sheet about 25 to 100 kilometers or 16 to 62 miles wide all the way to Dansk. This was brought about by a stagnant high-pressure area that lingered over central and northern Scandinavia from around February 10th to 24th. After this, strong southern winds pushed the ice further into the north, and much of the waters north of Gotland were again free of ice, which had then packed against the shores of southern Finland. The effects of the aforementioned high pressure area did not reach the southern parts of the Baltic Sea, and thus the entire sea did not freeze over. However, floating ice was additionally observed near Swinoujscie Harbor in January 2010. In recent years before 2011, the Bothnian Bay and the Bothnian Sea were frozen solid ice near the Baltic coast and dense floating ice far from it. In 2008, almost no ice formed except for a short period in March. During winter, fast ice which is attached to the shoreline develops first, rendering ports unusable without services of icebreakers. Level ice sludge, pancake ice, and rafter ice form in more open regions. The gleaming expanse of ice is similar to the Arctic, with wind-driven pack ice and ridges up to 15 meters for 9 feet. Offshore of the land-fast ice, the ice remains very dynamic all year and is relatively easily moved around by winds and therefore forms pack ice, made up of large piles and ridges pushed against the land-fast ice and shores. In the spring, the Gulf of Finland and the Gulf of Bothnia normally thaw in late April, with some ice ridges persisting until May in the eastern extremities of the Gulf of Finland. In the northernmost reaches of the Bothnian Bay, ice usually stays until late May. By early June, it is practically always gone. However, in the famine year of 1867, remnants of ice were observed as late as July 17th near Udskar, even as far south as Øresund. Remnants of ice has been observed in May on several occasions, near Tarbæk in May 15th, 1942, and near Copenhagen on May 11th, 1771. Drift ice was also observed on May 11th, 1799. Here we see a satellite image of the Baltic Sea in a mild winter. The ice cover is the main habitat for two large mammals, the gray seal and the Baltic ringed seal, both of which feed underneath the ice and breed on its surface. Of these two seals, only the Baltic ringed seal suffers when there is not adequate ice in the Baltic Sea, as it feeds its young only while on ice. The gray seal is adapted to reproducing also if no ice in the sea. The sea ice also harbors several species of algae that live in the bottom and inside unfrozen brine pockets in the ice. Due to the often fluctuating winter temperatures between above and below freezing, the saltwater ice of the Baltic Sea can be treacherous and hazardous to walk on, in particular in comparison to the more stable freshwater ice sheets on the interior lakes. The Baltic Sea flows out through the Danish Straits. However, the flow is complex. A surface layer of brackish water discharges 940 cubic kilometers, or 230 cubic miles per year into the North Sea. Due to the difference in salinity by salinity permeation principle, a subsurface layer of more saline water moving in the opposite direction brings in 475 cubic kilometers, or 114 cubic miles per year. It mixes very slowly with the upper waters, resulting in a salinity gradient from top to bottom, with most of the salt water remaining below 40 to 70 meters, or 130 to 230 feet deep. The general circulation is anti-clockwise, northwards along its eastern boundary, and south along with the western one. The difference between the outflow and the inflow comes entirely from fresh water. More than 250 streams drain a basin of about 1.6 million square kilometers, or 620,000 square miles, contributing a volume of 660 cubic kilometers, or 160 cubic miles per year to the Baltic. They include the major rivers of North Europe, such as the Oder and Vistula, the Niemen, the Daguva, and the Neva. Additional fresh water comes from the difference of precipitation, less evaporation, which is positive. Here's sea traversing the Baltic Sea and ice. An important source of salty water is infrequent inflows of North Sea water into the Baltic. Such inflows important to the Baltic ecosystem because of the oxygen they transport into the Baltic deeps used to happen regularly until the 1980s. In recent decades, they have become less frequent. The latest four occurred in 1983, 1993, 2003, 2003 and 2014, suggesting a new interflow period of about 10 years. The water level is generally far more dependent on the regional wind situation than on tidal effects. However, tidal currents occur in narrow passages in the western parts of the Baltic Sea. Tides can reach 17 to 19 centimeters in the Gulf of Finland. The significant wave height is generally much lower than that of the North Sea. Quite violent, sudden storms sweep the surface 10 or more times a year due to large transient temperature differences and a long reach of the wind. Seasonal winds also cause small changes in sea level of the order of 0.5 meters or 1 foot 8 inches. According to the media, during a storm on January 2017, an extreme wave above 14 meters has been measured and significant wave height of around 8 meters has been measured by the FMI. A numerical study has shown the presence of events with 8 to 10 meters significant wave heights. Those extreme waves events can play an important role in the coastal zone on erosion and sea dynamics. We see on particularly cold winters, the coastal parts of the Baltic Sea freeze into ice thick enough to walk or ski on. The Baltic Sea is the world's largest inland brackish sea. Only two other brackish waters are larger according to some measurements. The Black Sea is larger in both surface area and water volume, but most of it is located outside the continental shelf. Only a small percentage is inland. The Caspian Sea is large in water volume, but despite its name, is a lake rather than a sea. The Baltic Sea salinity is much lower than that of ocean water, which averages 3.5%, as a result of abundant freshwater runoff from the surrounding land, rivers, streams, and alike. Combined with the shallowness of the sea itself, runoff contributes roughly 1/40th its total volume per year, as the volume of the basin is about 21,000 cubic kilometers or 5,000 cubic miles, and yearly runoff is about 500 cubic kilometers or 120 cubic miles. The open surface waters of the Baltic Sea proper generally have a salinity of 0.3 to 0.9%, which is borderline fresh water. The flow of fresh water into the sea from approximately 200 rivers and the introduction of salt from the southwest builds up a gradient of salinity in the Baltic Sea. The highest surface salinities, generally 0.7 to 0.9%, are in the southwesternmost part of the Baltic, in the Arkona and Bornholm basins, the former located roughly between Southeast Zealand and Bornholm, and the latter directly east of Bornholm. It gradually falls further east and north, reaching the lowest in the Bothnian Bay at around 0.3%. Drinking the surface water of the Baltic as a means of survival would actually hydrate the body instead of dehydrating, as is the case with ocean water. As salt water is denser than fresh water, the bottom of the Baltic Sea is saltier than the surface. This creates a vertical stratification of the water column, a halocline, that represents a barrier to the exchange of oxygen and nutrients. and fosters completely separate maritime environments. The difference between the bottom and surface salinities varies depending on location. Overall, it follows the same southwest to east and north pattern as the surface. At the bottom of the Arkona Basin, equaling depths greater than 40 meters or 130 feet, and Bornholm Basin, depths greater than 80 meters or 260 feet, it is typically 1.4 to 1.8%. Further east and north, the salinity at the bottom is consistently lower, being the lowest in Bothnian Bay, depths greater than 120 meters or 390 feet, where it is slightly below 0.4% or only marginally higher than the surface in the same region. Here we see piles of drift ice on the shore of Putulade near Virstu, Estonia in late April. In contrast, the salinity of the Danish Straits, which connect the Baltic Sea and Kattegat, tends to be significantly higher, with major variations from year to year. For example, the surface and bottom salinity of the Great Belt is typically around 2% and 2.8% respectively, which is only somewhat below that of the Kattegat. The water surplus caused by the continuous inflow of rivers and streams to the Baltic Sea means there generally is a flow of brackish water out through the Danish Straits to the Kattegat and eventually the Atlantic. Significant flows in the opposite direction, saltwater from the Kattegat through the Danish Straits of the Baltic Sea, are less regular. From 1880 to 1980, inflows occurred on average 6 to 10 times per decade. Since 1980, it has been much less frequent, although a very large inflow occurred in 2014. The rating of mean discharges differs from the ranking of hydrological lengths, from the most distant source to the sea, and the rating of the nominal lengths. Goda Alv, a tributary of the Kattegat, is not listed as due to the northward upper low salinity flow in the sea. Its water hardly reaches the Baltic proper. Here we see depths of the Baltic Sea in meters. The Neva has a mean discharge of 2,500 cubic meters per second, a nominal length of 74 kilometers, and hydrological length of 860, a basin of 281,000 square kilometers, and shares the basin with Russia. How should I say this? And Russia, and Finland, Lagoda affluent Vuoksi, share the base, are states sharing the basin. Let me do that again. Neva has Russia and Finland, Lagoda affluent Vuoksi, as states sharing the basin. Awkward, but whatever. The longest water course is from Suna, 280 kilometers, to Lake Onega, 160 kilometers, to Zvir, 224 kilometers, Lake Ladoga, 122 kilometers, to Neva. The Vistula has a mean discharge of 1,000 cubic meters per second, a length of 1,000 kilometers, a basin of 194 square kilometers. Poland has tributaries. Belarus, Ukraine, and Slovakia all share the basin. The longest watercourse is Bug, 704 kilometers, to Nauru, 22 kilometers, to Vistula, 156 kilometers, a total of 1,200 kilometers. I'm curious. I see. The Daugava has a mean discharge of 678 cubic meters per second and a length of 1,000 kilometers. A basin of 87,000 square kilometers. Russia, as the source, Belarus and Latvia share the basin. Namen has a mean discharge of 678 cubic meters per second, a length of 937 kilometers, and a basin of 98,000 square kilometers. Belarus as the source, Lithuania and Russia share the basin. Kemijoki has a mean discharge of 556 cubic meters per second, a length of 550 kilometers as the main river and 600 kilometers for the river system, a basin of 51,000 square kilometers. Finland and Norway, with the source at Onisjoki, share the basin. It is a longer tributary of the Kittinen. I'm not sure what that cell is trying to say. The Oder has a mean discharge of 540 cubic meters per second, a length of 866 kilometers, a basin of 118,000 square kilometers. The Czech Republic as a source, Poland and Germany all share the basin. The longest watercourse is the Warta, 808 kilometers, to the Oder, 180 kilometers, with a total of 928 kilometers. The Lule Alv has a mean discharge of 506 cubic meters per second, 461 kilometers in length, a basin of 25,000 square kilometers, with Sweden being the only state that contains it. Narva has a mean discharge of 415 cubic meters per second, with a nominal length of 77 kilometers and a hydrological length of 652 kilometers. As a basin of 56,000 square kilometers. Russia, with the source at Velikaya, and Estonia share the basin. The longest watercourse is Velikaya at 430 kilometers to Lake Peipus, 145 kilometers to Narva. The Torn Alv has a mean discharge of 388 cubic meters per second, a nominal length of 520 kilometers, or 630 kilometers hydrological, 40,000 square kilometers as a basin. Norway as a source, Sweden and Finland share the basin. The longest watercourse is Vafoljonka to Kamajaka to Abiskuyar to Abiskuyok, a total of 40 kilometers, to Tumitratsk, 70 kilometers, to Torn Alv. see the Baltic Sea near Klaipeda. Islands and archipelagos include Åland, part of Finland, and autonomous. You see skerries form an integral and typical part of many of the archipelagos of the Baltic Sea, such as these in the archipelago of Åland, Finland. In the archipelago sea of Finland, there is Pargus, Nagu, Korpo, Hutskar, Krustafi, and Kimito. The Balkinge archipelago in Sweden, Bornholm, including Christiansø, Denmark, Falster, Denmark, Gotland in Sweden, Heliuoto in Finland, Kotlin in Russia, Lolland in Denmark, Kvarken archipelago, including Valsarana in Finland, Mon, Denmark, Åland, Sweden, Rügen, Germany. You see the Stockholm archipelago. The Stockholm archipelago of Sweden contains Varmdon, Usedom or Usenum, split between Germany and Poland. West Estonian archipelago of Estonia contains Huma, Muhu, Srema, Vormsi, Volin in Poland, and Zealand in Denmark. Here's an aerial view of Bornholm, Denmark. Countries that border the sea are Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Germany, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Russia, and Sweden. The country's lands in the outer drainage basin are Belarus, the Czech Republic, Norway, Slovakia, and Ukraine. The Baltic Sea drainage basin is roughly 4 times the surface area of the sea itself. About 48% of the region is forested, with Sweden and Finland containing the majority of the forest around the gulfs of Bothnia and Finland. You see the population density of the Baltic Sea catchment area. About 20% of the land is used for agriculture and pasture, mainly in Poland and around the edge of the Baltic proper. In Germany, Denmark, and Sweden, about 17% of the basin is unused open land with another 8% of wetlands. Most of the latter in the Gulfs of Bothnia and Finland. The rest of the land is heavily populated. About 85 million people live in the Baltic drainage basin. 15 million within 10 kilometers or 6 miles of the coast, and 29 million within 50 kilometers or 31 miles of the coast. Around 22 million live in population centers of over 250,000. 90% of these are concentrated in the 10 kilometers or 6 miles band around the coast. Of the nations containing all or part of the basin, Poland includes 45% of the 85 million, Russia 12%, Sweden 10%, and the others less than 6% each. The biggest coastal cities by population are St. Petersburg, Russia, 5.3 million, and the metro area, 6 million. Stockholm, Sweden, 962,000, metro area, 2.3 million. Riga, Latvia, 696,000, metropolitan area of 842,000. Helsinki, Finland, 650,000, metro area, 1.4 million. Dansk, Poland, 462,000, metro area, 1 million. Tallinn, Estonia, 435,000. Metro area, 542,000. Kaliningrad, 431,000. Szczecin, Poland, 413,000. Metro area, 778,000. Gdynia, Poland, 255,000. Metro area, 1 million. Espoo, Finland, 257,000. Part of the Helsinki metro area. Kiel, Germany, 247,000. Lübeck, Germany, 216,000. Rostock, Germany, 212,000. Klaipėda, Lithuania, 194,000. Oulu, Finland, 191,000. Turku, Finland, 180,000. Here's the Velizhsky Island in St. Petersburg, Russia. Other important ports in Estonia are Pamu, 44,000. Mardu, population of 16,000. Sillamäe, 16,000. Finland has Pori, population of 83,000. Kotka, 54,000. Kokkola, 46,000. Port of Naantali, 18,000. Mariehamn, 11,000. Hanko, 9,000. Germany has Flensburg, population 94,000. Stralsund, 58,000. Greifswald, 55,000. Wismar, 44,000. Eckernford, 22,000. Neustadt in Holstein, 16,000. Wolgast, 12,000. Sassnitz, 10,000. Latvia has Liepāja, with a population of 85,000. Ventspils, 44,000. Lithuania has Palanga, with a population of 17,000. Poland has Kolobregs, with a population of 44,000. Sunoskiusi, 41,000. Police, 34,000. Władysławowo, 15,000. Garlovo, 14,000. Russia has Vyborg, with a population of 79,000. Baltisik, 34,000. And Sweden has Norrköping, with a population of 84,000. Gavle, 75,000. Trelleborg, 26,000. Karlshamn, 19,000. And Oxlösund, 11,000. Here we see Stockholm in Sweden. Excuse me. The Baltic Sea somewhat resembles a riverbed with two tributaries, the Gulf of Finland and the Gulf of Bothnia. Geological surveys show that before the Paleocene, instead of the Baltic Sea, there was a wide plain around a great river that paleontologists called the Eridanos. Several Pliocene glacial episodes scooped out the riverbed into the sea basin. By the time of the last, or Eemian stage, the Eemian Sea was in place. Instead of a true sea, the Baltic can even today also be understood as the common estuary of all the rivers flowing into it. From that time, the waters underwent geologic history summarized under the names listed below. Many of the stages are named after maritime animals, for example, the Littorina mollusk. There are clear markers of changing water temperatures and salinity. Here we see Riga in Latvia. The factors that determined the sea's characteristics were the submergence or emergence of the region due to the weight of ice and subsequent isostatic readjustment, and the connecting channels it found to the North Sea Atlantic, either through the Straits of Denmark or at what are now the large lakes of Sweden and the White Sea Arctic Sea. Here see Helsinki in Finland. The Eemian Sea existed from 130,000 to 115,000 years ago. Baltic Ice Lake, 12,000 to 10,000 years ago. Yoldia Sea, 10,000 to 9,500 years ago. Anchilus Lake, 9,500 to 8,000 years ago. Mastigloia Sea, 8,000 to 7,500 years ago. Littorina Sea, 7,500 to 4,000 years ago. Post-Littorina Sea, 4,000 years ago to present. The land is still emerging isostatically from its depressed state, which was caused by the weight of ice during the last glaciation. The phenomenon is known as post-glacial rebound. Consequently, the surface area and the depth of the sea are diminishing. The uplift is about 8 millimeters per year on the Finnish coast of the northernmost Gulf of Bothnia. In the area, the former seabed is only gently sloping, leading to large areas of land being reclaimed in what are, geologically speaking, relatively short periods, decades or centuries. Gdansk and Poland. The Baltic Sea anomaly is a feature on an indistinct sonar image taken by Swedish salvage divers on the floor of the northern Baltic Sea in June 2011. The treasure hunters suggested the image showed an object with unusual features of seemingly extraordinary origin. Speculation published in tabloid newspapers claimed that the object was a sunken UFO. A consensus of experts and scientists say that the image most likely shows a natural geological formation. Here's Sea to Linen in Estonia. The fauna of the Baltic Sea is a mixture of marine and freshwater species. Among marine fishes are Atlantic cod, Atlantic herring, European hake, European plaice, European flounder, shorthorn sculpin, and turbot. And examples of freshwater species include European perch, northern pike, whitefish, and common roach. Freshwater species may occur at outflows of rivers or streams in all coastal sections of the Baltic Sea. Otherwise, marine species dominate in most sections of the Baltic, at least as far north as Gavel, where less than 1/10 are freshwater species. Further north, the pattern is inverted. In the Bothnian Bay, roughly 2/3 of the species are freshwater. In the far north of this bay, saltwater species are almost entirely absent. Saltwater species are almost entirely absent. For example, the common starfish and short crab, two species that are very widespread along European coasts, are both unable to cope with significantly lower salinity. Their range limits is west of Bornholm, meaning that they are absent from the vast majority of the Baltic Sea. Some marine species, like the Atlantic cod and European flounder, can survive at relatively low salinities but need higher salinities to breed, which therefore occurs in deeper parts of the Baltic Sea. There is a decrease in species richness from the Danish belts to the Gulf of Bothnia. The decreasing salinity along this path causes restrictions in both physiology and habitats. At more than 6,000 species of invertebrates, fish, aquatic mammals, aquatic birds, and macrophytes, the Arkona Basin, roughly between Southeast Zealand and Bornholm, is far richer than other more eastern and northern basins in the Baltic Sea, which all have less than 400 species from these groups, with the exception of the Gulf of Finland, with more than 750 species. However, even the most diverse sections of the Baltic Sea have far fewer species than the almost full saltwater Kattegat, which is home to more than 1,600 species from these groups. The lack of tides has affected the marine species as compared with the Atlantic. Here we see Anchilus Lake around 8,700 years before present. the relic of Scandinavian glacier in white, the rivers Svea Alv, or Svea River, and Gulta Alv formed an outlet to the Atlantic. We also see much of modern Finland is former seabed or archipelago, illustrated as our sea levels immediately after the last ice age. Let's take a look. Since the Baltic is so young, there are only 2 or 3 known endemic species: the brown alga Fucus radicans and the flounder Platychthys solimali. So, solimdali. Both appear to have evolved in the Baltic Basin and were only recognized as species in 2005 and 2018, respectively, having formerly been confused with more widespread relatives. The tiny Copenhagen cockle, a rare mussel, is sometimes considered endemic, but has now been recorded in the Mediterranean. However, some consider non-Baltic records to be misidentifications of juvenile lagoon cockles. Several widespread marine species have distinctive subpopulations in the Baltic Sea, adapted to low salinity, such as the Baltic Sea forms of the Atlantic herring and lumpsucker, which are smaller than the widespread forms in the North Atlantic. A peculiar feature of the fauna is that it contains a number of glacial relict species, isolated populations of Arctic species which have remained in the Baltic Sea since the last glaciation, such as the large isopod Siduria entomon, the Baltic subspecies of ringed seal, and the four-horned sculpin. Some of these relics are derived from glacial lakes, such as Monoporia affins, which is a main element in the benthic fauna of the low salinity Bothnian Bay. Cetaceans in the Baltic Sea are monitored by the countries bordering the sea, and data compiled by various intergovernmental bodies, such as Azkabans. A critically endangered population of harbor porpoise inhabit the Baltic proper, whereas the species is abundant in the outer Baltic, western Baltic, and Danish Straits. And occasionally oceanic and out-of-range species, such as the mink whales, bottlenose dolphins, beluga whales, orcas, and beaked whales visit the waters. In recent years, very small but increasing rates fin whales and humpback whales migrate into the Baltic Sea, including mother and calf pair. Now extinct Atlantic gray whales remains found from Grasso along Bothnian Sea, southern Bothnian Gulf, and Nystad, and an eastern population of North Atlantic right whales that is facing functional extinction once migrated into the Baltic Sea. Other notable megafauna include the basking sharks. Satellite images taken in July 2010 reveal massive algal bloom covering 377,000 square kilometers or 146,000 square miles in the Baltic Sea. The area of the bloom extended from Germany and Poland to Finland. Researchers of the phenomenon have indicated that algal blooms have occurred every summer for decades. Fertilizer runoff from surrounding agricultural land has exacerbated the problem and led to increased eutrophication. Approximately 100,000 square kilometers or 38,000 square miles of the Baltic seafloor, a quarter of its total area, is a variable dead zone. The more saline and therefore denser water remains on the bottom, isolating it from surface waters and the atmosphere. This leads to decreased oxygen concentrations within the zone. It is mainly bacteria that grow in it, digesting organic material and releasing hydrogen sulfide. Because of this large anaerobic zone, the seafloor ecology differs from that of the neighboring Atlantic. Plans to artificially oxygenate areas of the Baltic that have experienced eutrophication have been proposed by the University of Gothenburg and InOcean AB. The proposal intends to use wind-driven pumps to inject oxygen or air into waters at or around 130 meters below sea level. After World War II, Germany had to be disarmed and large quantities of ammunition stockpiles were disposed directly into the Baltic Sea and the North Sea. Environmental experts and marine biologists warn that these ammunition dumps pose a major environmental threat with potentially life-threatening consequences to the health and safety of humans on the coastlines of these areas. Here we see a satellite photo of the Baltic Sea surrounding Gotland, Sweden, with algal bloom, phytoplankton swirling in the water. Oh, cool. Kind of pretty, actually. Construction of the Great Belt Bridge in Denmark, completed in 1997, and the Øresund Bridge Tunnel, completed in 1999, linking Denmark with Sweden, provided a highway and railroad connection between Sweden and the Danish mainland, the Jutland Peninsula, precisely the Zealand. The undersea tunnel of the Øresund Bridge Tunnel provides for navigation of large ships into and out of the Baltic Sea. The Baltic Sea is the main trade route for the export of Russian petroleum. Many of the countries neighboring the Baltic Sea have been concerned about this, since a major oil leak in a seagoing tanker would be disastrous for the Baltic given the slow exchange of water. The tourism industry surrounding the Baltic Sea is naturally concerned about oil pollution. Much shipbuilding is carried out in the shipyards around the Baltic Sea. The largest shipyards are at Dansk, Gdynia, and Szczecin, Poland, Kiel, Germany, Karlskrona and Malmo, Sweden, Rauma, Turku and Helsinki, Finland, Riga, Ventspils and Liepāja, Latvia, Klaipėda, Lithuania, and St. Petersburg, Russia. There are several cargo and passenger ferries that operate in the Baltic Sea, such as the Scandlines, Celia Line, Polferries, and Viking Line, Tallink, and superfast ferries. Construction of the Fehmarn Belt fixed link between Denmark and Germany is due to finish in 2029. It will be a 3-bore tunnel carrying 4 motorway lanes and 2 rail tracks. Here we see a pedestrian pier in Seelen, Germany. Piers include Albeck or Usedom, Germany, Bansen, Germany, Binz in Germany, Helgendam, Germany, Kulungsborn, Germany, Seelen, Germany, Liepāja, Latvia, Ventoi, Lithuania, Klaipėda, Lithuania, Dansk in Poland, Gdynia, Poland, Kolobrzeg, Poland, Mizdroy, Poland, and Sopot, Poland. Here we see Vetsogorsk Resort Town in Kaliningrad Oblast, Russia, and Zenio Beach in Poland. Resort towns include Haapsalu in Estonia, Kuressaare, Estonia, Narve-Joensuu, Estonia, Pärnu, Estonia, Hanko, Finland, Mariehamn, Finland, Binz, Germany. Hellingdam, Germany. Heringsdorf, Germany. Travemünde, Germany. Cellen, Germany. Weckermund, Germany. Jurmala, Latvia. Nida, Lithuania. Palanga, Lithuania. Vintoji, Lithuania. Jodkrant, Lithuania. Pervalka, Lithuania. Karkel, Lithuania. Kamien Pomorski, Poland. Kolbrzeg, Poland. Sopat, Poland. Swinoujski, Poland. Ustka, Poland. Velogorsk, Russia. For the first time ever, all the sources of pollution around an entire area were made subject to a single convention signed in 1974 by the then 7 Baltic coastal states. The 1974 convention entered into force May 30th, 1980. In the light of political changes and developments in international environment and maritime law, a new convention was signed in 1992 by all the states bordering on the Baltic Sea and the European Community. After ratification, the convention entered into force on January 17, 2000. The convention covers the whole of the Baltic Sea area, including inland waters and the water of the sea itself, as well as the seabed. Measures are also taken in the whole catchment area of the Baltic Sea to reduce land-based pollution. The Convention on the Protection of the Marine Environment of the Baltic Sea Area, 1992, entered into force on January 17, 2000. The governing body of the convention is the Helsinki Commission, also known as HELCOM, or Baltic Marine Environment Protection Commission. The present contracting parties are Denmark, Estonia, the European Community, Finland, Germany, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Russia, and Sweden. The ratification instruments were deposited by the European Community, Germany, Latvia, and Sweden in 1994, by Estonia and Finland in 1995, by Denmark in 1996, by Lithuania in 1997, and by Poland and Russia in November 1999. Hour and a half, that's a fucking long one, alright. Oops. Not supposed to swear, I guess, but whatever. I kinda watch this. Fuck. Alright. Well. That is it for the day, I guess. Ugh, meant to do two, but this one was just so fucking long. Oh, oops, there I go again. Alright.